What is up, ladies and gentlemen? It's your boy Menace, and today we are coming in with a banger of a video, a true hoot and a holler. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 15 of the Menace After Hours pod. I'm sitting here with Rob from Warp Corp, ladies and gentlemen. Rob, say hi.
How you doing today, Menace?
I'm doing fucking fantastic. So you are allowed to swear on this pod. You are allowed to do whatever the fuck you want, just because you have the right. You know what I mean? And that's something I'm really big on. Is I don't want you to feel like you're ever gonna say anything that's gonna offend people, because that just gets clicks. You know what I'm saying?
Right. No,
So
I feel you.
yeah, no. So I want to jump right in. What is Warp Corp about to you? Like, so we started talking off camera about it, and you started a skate park in the community, and then it kind of evolved from there. So can you, if you don't mind, can you just walk me through the step-by-step play of how everything happened, especially out of the military, and what happened there?
Yeah, for sure, man. It's a pretty interesting path in life that I'm on. In the early 2000s, I was definitely, just really wanting to kind of find that space where I am not going to dedicate my whole life to chasing money. And then maybe when I'm old and tired, I can have some money to go enjoy life. So, that work life balance thing, I really started trying to figure out what I want to do, what's going to make me happy, what's going to make me a better father and husband. And, so I just kind of started pursuing my organic passions, which were basically action sports. Back then they called them extreme sports. Today I call them, adventure sports. It doesn't matter. But, I definitely was, snowboarding, wakeboarding, first gen mountain biking and snowboarding. And that kind of pulled me back to skateboarding, which was something I did, in the 70s as a kid. But boy, back then it wasn't anything close to what it is today. But I just always, loved the thrill and, of kind of pushing the limits and all that kind of stuff. So, when I was 40 years old, I was at that crossroad in life. And, my wife and I sat down and I told her, I want to do this thing. And the Warp Skate Park was already here in Woodstock, Illinois. And, I went over there and, I was thinking of opening one up near Rockford where I lived at the time. But, when I walked into Warp, and I had been going there to skate a little bit myself and bring my kids there, but I knew this thing was a dying dog, and that this guy was probably close to the end of his run, and we cut a deal, and I just bought the skate park in its entirety here in Woodstock, and as I said, the first day we opened under my leadership was there's a new sheriff in town, and we don't want to go backwards. We're taking this thing forwards. If you don't like how I'm going to run it, too bad. But at 40 years of age, I realized that I had a lot to bring to these young people in the lessons in life I learned. The mistakes I made, the things I did in my youth, running the streets, not going to school, smoking weed every day, getting into acid young and all that crap, and drinking. So, I was already, long-term California sober at that time. And, I just said, hey, I got responsibility to young people as well, to kind of share my experiences without being a preacher, teacher type old man. But, just to say, hey, man, you don't really need this crap. You don't need to be getting high every day and blowing off school. It's not going to get you anywhere good. So, we started creating incentive programs, skate for grades. You show me a straight A report card, you skate for free, things like that. But I knew early on that, I had, I don't care if you want to call it divine intervention or karma or the power of the universe, but, I knew at that point in time that there was, something different I was supposed to be doing. I didn't really know exactly, but, I love being around young people, hanging out with young people. The older you get, the younger you stay. You get educated on new things that maybe my generation wasn't so aware of or understanding of. And, I just love being around young people. They're inspiring, their energy, their motivation. And, so we just started with skateboarding, and, from the beginning, we employed art, same things we employ at Warp Core today: music, art, and action sports. We had art exhibits, workshops at the skate park. We had bands playing at the skate park all the time. We did hundreds of all ages music shows in the skate park over 10 years time. And, through that whole process, as I started seeing that believe it or not, sometimes young people are listening to the old bald guy that, and the things I say to help them not make mistakes or have a better, attitude for a new day. And, I really started kind of looking at that seriously and saying, man, you know, there's something here. I come from a big Irish Catholic family. I got seven brothers and sisters. And, I had phenomenal people around me that helped me, get right when I was trying to get sober and all that. But, and that's also something a lot of people don't have. I had a phenomenal support system around me. My family supported it. They didn't tempt me, come on, let's drink, all that crap. Even my closest friends, they really respected I was trying to get right because I think when I was drinking, they got tired of me punching them in the head and shit, so they were supporting me not drinking, but
Yeah.
they still kind of wanted to hang out. So, just it's a culmination of a lot of things that brought us to, running Warp Core as a nonprofit organization. And really, it's just because of my experiences and me kind of identifying the green lights that we see in life sometimes. Matthew McConaughey wrote a book called Green Lights, kind of telling about his whole career and his life. And, that same story's been told in 100 different books, 100 different ways. But, I started noticing the green lights in life instead of not seeing it and driving right past it. I started noticing the green lights. And a green light in this reference is really, there's a path here. You should listen to that. That green light is telling you to go straight or turn left or right. Even if you don't know where it's taking you, you should try it because you might be missing out in big things if you don't. It's kind of like either wearing blinders in life or not. If you wear blinders in life, you don't see the perimeter, the periphery. You don't see what's going on around you. And when you don't see these things, you might be missing very unique, once in a lifetime opportunities. Maybe it's to meet a new person or to help somebody or whatever it might be. So, this it's really kind of hard to describe how I got here, but it's just every day's a new day. Every day's an adventure in my life. And when you do good for the right, you do things for the right reason. It's kind of the law of attraction. If you put good out, good will come. And
So
before I knew it, we were just on the square, have a building, and people are coming.
that's awesome. There are some things that I want to backtrack just a little bit. When you first bought this skate park, right? You said that you made some changes, right? What changes, if you remember specifically? Because I'm just kind of curious in my own light.
One of the big things that I started putting in there was I respect the culture of the skate, the skate culture, being an action sports athlete myself, I understood it. It's a lot of people that are in these cultures are kind of, back in the, 80s, they were, the misspent youth, the at risk kids, and really what I saw was that drugs and alcohol were just everywhere in the skate community. We started going out to California to bigger contests or to events that these skate companies were having. And, I just a little bit was kind of shocked that none of the elders in skateboarding really had a big voice in, hey guys, we can party hardy, have fun, but if that becomes your every single moment of every single day, this ain't good, man. You're not going to thrive. You're not going to be the best skater you can be. You're not going to be the best person you can be. And I was a little bit set back at how many older, veteran skaters, you have the Christian Hossois and a couple others, that, maybe they got sober in jail like Hosoi did, or they found religion and faith, and that was a tool for them to get sober. But, at that time, there were very few of the people that had such huge influence on a whole generation of young kids to, say, I never heard one say, hey guys, man, do your thing, but be cool. Don't do too many drugs all at once or any messaging. It was just go. It's kind of reflective of like the hippies in the 60s. It nothing mattered. If your jam was heroin, no worries. No one said, hey, don't do that shit. It's dangerous. Or if your jam was acid or hallucinogenics or booze or whatever, pills, no one said, hey, until about 1975 when everybody started freaking dying.
Mm-hmm.
Jim Morrison, Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, all these legends. Then some of these older veterans in the music scene did start saying, hey, ho, even Jerry Garcia, I'm a huge Deadhead. I love the Dead and jam music, but even Jerry Garcia, as he was still in the throes of his own addiction, started putting it out there. Hey, kids, what we thought was right and cool in the 60s turned out to be a bust. It's not good. And, that's what I saw lacking in skateboarding. You had the Tony Hawks and some of the cleaner, but they were still just, out there, being a part of skateboarding and accepted and everything. But, I just thought there was a huge gap in the messaging to young people. And,
Do
you
you
know,
do you support young people being California sober, and then what does that look like for you specifically?
as a just me as Rob Muter,
Yeah.
I believe all drugs should be legal. Heroin, cocaine, all of it. And
Can I ask why?
highly regulated because if it's done right, and this might be pie in the sky shit, but it's always harder to do something than to say something. But I do believe with the rise of fentanyl coming in and now all these other synthetics that are coming into the recreational drug supply, you know, I just think if you want to do blow, you should be able to go get the cleanest, safest product so it doesn't kill you with a key bump.
Mm-hmm.
Because some asshole, through the process of production, through distribution of heroin or cocaine, decided it might be funny or whatever to put fentanyl in that shit. Through 2017, 18, 19, we were at the peak of people in this community, McHenry County, dying way too much because they did not know what was in that product. Maybe they're former addicts, heroin users that had been sober for a year and they relapse and they go to the same dosage levels of heroin that they knew before was their safe level of consumption without getting too high or risking overdose. But when there's now fentanyl in there, I could name 10 people that died that way.
Really?
Oh yeah, right here in the Woodstock and McHenry County area. Unbelievable how many people died because they relapsed and did one key bump of blow in the bar. Bam, gone.
Wow.
Before Narcan was everywhere in the community, and that's just bullshit. I'm a pretty straight talker. I'm a Marine Corps veteran. I don't really at the end of the day give a shit what people think about me. If you don't know me, you don't know me. You're entitled to your own opinion. But I'm not here to make you or anybody else happy. When it comes to these issues, when we're talking about drugs, for sure, I want to talk straight. We are going to, if you come into my orbit and we start having a conversation, it's not going to be all, blue skies and butterflies. Oh, it's okay. Because, I don't judge if people are using any substance. What I want to do is make sure they don't fucking die,
Mm-hmm.
period. And that you can get right. Today, there's a plethora of people that we all idolize, celebrities, musicians, movie stars, artists that are long-term sober and are out there beating the drum. Don't do what I did. It is not the right choice. And, sometimes, unfortunately, when it comes to the street, recreational drug usage, man, it's getting more dangerous. There's no safe recreational drugs. You can't, unless you test. If you're testing your dope, then at least there's no fentanyl in it. So cool. If you're doing blow and you got a gram and you want to do $30 worth of a line, then and there's no fentanyl in there or any of these other synthetics, then you're just going to get that buzz you're looking for. And, you know, I always said, I heard one of the members of the Jefferson Airplane, is just an old band from the 60s. And they always joked in the book I read about that band. They said, we were drug dealers selling drugs to all the hippies and musicians in the 60s in San Francisco, and we became a band. And Paul Kantner, one of the members of that band, said, cocaine is an IQ test. If you're still doing it, you flunked the test. And I kind of resonate with that because I did plenty of that shit in my life. And, I get the reference he was saying is it's not wrong or bad if we try these things or we do these things. But if you're still doing cocaine, you're flunking the test. There's no, hey, I can do blow for a year or two and everything will be good casually, because the addiction. Cocaine is a highly addictive product. Heroin. I was a functional heroin addict for 20 years, but you still crashed and burned. You had something in you that allowed you to push through 10, 20-year addictions without ruining your life, your kids, your family, your business, whatever, but it still caught you. Most people don't have that horsepower. You're talking 2, 3 years of hardcore use of addiction, heroin, cocaine becomes too expensive. You go to crack. So now you're smoking crack. You can't get crack. You're going to do meth. This cycle, there's no upside to it. Not one. I do not know one functional addict who is thriving. Not one. Sooner or later, you're going to fucking crash and burn. And usually when it comes to men and women, it's a little bit down the road. You start partying hard at 25. By 35, you're a full-blown alcoholic, and you do blow every chance you can, and now you got 2 or 3 kids. Who's going to pay the price for that shit when you crash and burn? Because you will crash and burn. Maybe you just die, and that's what it is. But now you got 2 kids and a widow who don't know what the fuck to do. They don't have life insurance. They don't have money. Now you just fucked over 3, 4 more people. Mm-hmm. Why would you do that? Absolutely. Oh, that won't happen to me. We all say that in our youth. I said it. Wrong thing. Big. You're bullshitting yourself when you say that.
Can I ask, what was the catalyst for you to get sober?
Really, it was because I had one situation with one of my oldest and closest friends. He was going through a big breakup. The love of his life, that whole experience, basically every one of us kind of have to live through, where, you think this is your partner for life and things turn sideways and you break up. And he was going through that pretty heavy. I mean, this is one of my oldest and best friends. And I was working in Belvedere at the time. I was out of the Marine Corps for probably weeks. And so still pretty hardcore jarhead shit going on in my head. And, he was a friend. He was needing help. He was hurting. So I drove to his apartment after work, and it was just him and I. Bought some steaks and some food and some beer, and we just cooked on the grill. And I bought a case of Heineken and, drank most of it myself. And when I woke up in the morning, because I slept there before he woke me up at 6 o'clock in the morning, just saying, get the fuck out of my house. I don't ever want to see you again. You're a fucking asshole. You didn't fucking do a thing to help me. Get the fuck out. And I was just like, yo, bro, what did I do? And he's like, get the fuck out. A, I got to go to work myself, and B, fuck off. And that hit me like a freight train. And I gave it time, and I circled back, and I was just like, dude, you can hate me, whatever, but I think I deserve for you to tell me. And, I was slapping him around, tough guy shit, get over it. Just being a real asshole. And I also, he had this really cool brick wall in his apartment. And I guess I broke pretty much every Heineken bottle I drank on his brick wall in his kitchen and made a huge fucking mess. And he didn't appreciate that. But, having somebody that close to me basically tell me, hey, man, that ain't cool. Mm-hmm. And to be honest with you, I didn't remember. I remember throwing a couple bottles at that wall, but I don't remember really any of it. We were smoking a ton of weed and drinking a lot of fucking beer, and, it went sideways. And, in a sober frame of mind, I took that shit very seriously. And I had attempted to quit drinking in the Marine Corps, but boy, that's a tough space to try and quit drinking because, if you smoke weed, you're probably going to get busted in a piss test. If you do drugs in the military, you're going to get caught. There's no way around it. And I didn't want to ruin the 4 years I committed to serving our country and end up getting kicked out after 2.5, 3 years or whatever. So I tried to get sober 3 or 4 different times. And I had good runs, 6, 8 months, no booze. Something would happen. Boom. The bros are all together. Let's go out into town or whatever. And, it just, it didn't work for me. I had some good time sober and just focusing on fitness and health and nutrition, but kept stumbling. But when I came out and went to work with my brothers and my father in our family business, I knew real quick, raging isn't going to help me help my father and our family business. It's not going to help me get a better life. If I stay at this level, my own brothers will probably fire me. I didn't want that. And, it just was, I got to stop. And, the ultimate catalyst for me to quit drinking and doing cocaine and all that shit was really meeting my wife. I knew my wife in high school casually. We didn't date or anything. We were just friends. She was really good friends with one of my brothers. And, once I started hanging out with her a little bit more, we had a couple conversations, about, relationship and the feelings we had for each other. And, she was with us at a party early in our relationship. And, we were doing a bunch of blow and drinking. And, I remember that night as a fun night. We were partying hard. I was surrounded by a bunch of people I love. And, as the night went on, she was like, dude, I got to go. I got to work tomorrow. So I took her home, came back to the party and, did our thing. But, we connected a few days later and, it was pretty straight. She just said, hey, man, I really have strong feelings for you. But that dude I saw the other night, not so good. I don't like that guy. And, again, in a moment of clarity and sobriety, I was like, so this woman who I have huge feelings for or cocaine and drinking? Easy choice for me, buddy. That was just the easiest decision I ever made because I was trying to get sober. So it was the final catalyst. My buddy John telling me all that shit, and then my wife Cara telling me what she told me in that moment. And I tell that story all the time, and she honestly doesn't even remember it. So maybe it was just in my head, but I remember it as the way I remember it. But, it was a pretty big catalyst. Another green light. That was a green light in life I didn't ignore. And it was the best decision I ever made, hands down. And we're, coming up on 38 years and 39 years of marriage right now. So,
Holy shit.
that was because, that was something we all want out of life. We want to find our place. We want to find our people. If we go through life and don't ever truly find your people, what a loss, what a tragedy. And that in part and parcel is what Warp Core is all about. Because I had that blessing to have found my life partner, not my wife, not somebody that is subservient to me, my partner. I've never looked at, my wife as anything but my partner in life, not my wife, old school shit. And, it was super easy for me to just say, I am not going to fucking drink because everything that bad that ever happened to my life started because of booze, not because I was stoned on pot. I never did cocaine sober. I never did cocaine if I wasn't drunk. I never did cocaine if I was just smoking weed. I never did cocaine if I was taking acid or mushrooms. But if I was fucking drinking, there's a greater chance than not because that fucking drug seems to come out of nowhere at the worst times and present itself to you, no matter where you are. You could be in the Mojave Desert, and if you relapse and start drinking, a fucking coke addict is going to jump out from behind a cat, and say, "Here, I got blow for you, bro." Crazy how that shit happens. But, it was just really sequence of events, again, not missing the red lights, or some people call them the omens in life. I didn't miss probably two of the most important ones. Was, again, my buddy John telling me fuck off, and my now wife saying, hey man, I'm not judging you, I'm not telling you what you should or shouldn't do, but I'm telling you that I didn't like that dude, not one bit. And, again, the benefit from that far outweighs a couple good nights of partying, doing drugs, and blowing what money you have on cocaine. That's for damn sure.
So drinking to you was not only your drug of choice, but the thing that you really had to get over in a
Yep.
sense, right?
Yep. If I didn't quit drinking, I'd probably be dead, because not I'm not saying that I wasn't surrounding myself with a bunch of fucking maniacs. We were raging hard, man. Even my brothers and closest friends, we were all raging. The thing that really came out of that was, I got a lot of thank yous, and by being that designated driver. Because, I don't know if it was the Marine Corps or the way I was raised with a tough but loving mother, and, of 8 kids and a phenomenal father. We were Irish Catholics growing up in near Chicago, and booze was everywhere. The first beer I ever drank, I stole out of our church in 7th grade. We stole a case of beer when we found it in the basement of the church, and, the rest is history. But, drinking is not inherently bad. I don't think everybody should be sober. If you can drink in moderation, like my wife can, have a White Claw or a glass of wine, that's great. If you can moderate and control yourself, that's great. I don't believe in, some of the teachings of the recovery community, that if you don't accept Jesus and find God and work the 12 steps, you're never going to be recovered. I got a couple arguments to that. What if I'm a Buddhist? What if I'm a Muslim? What if I'm agnostic? I can't get sober and be right because I don't accept your God? That's a head fuck to me personally. I call bullshit on that. But, you can still find your way and use the system of treatment and recovery. I'm not shitting on the recovery community. I'm not, on AA, NA, any of it. It all works, but there has to be multiple options. When I discovered Smart Recovery as an option to AA, I mean, my mom, made me go to an AA meeting with one of my cousins who got sober, and when I was in the Marine Corps, and halfway through that shit, I was like, get me the fuck out of here. I'm 23 years old. Not even, I was like 20. And sitting in a room with a bunch of 50 and 60-year-old grumpy ass old men smoking cigarettes like a fiend, telling me I'm a fucking pussy and an idiot because I can't not quit drinking. I'm like,
That's not how
in
that
what
works.
world is
Yeah.
that going to work on a 20-year-old person?
Never,
Yeah,
never.
I told them
0 out of
all
a
fuck
100 percent
off and
chance.
left, and but excuse me, several of my family members have got long-term sober. We were raised Catholic, and that's great. But it worked for them. It just didn't work for me. If I would have found Smart Recovery and shit 1987, that would have been amazing. Because it's a different form of meetings and treatment and recovery. Now we got refuge recovery, which is based on Buddhist principles. We got Smart Recovery. We got AA, NA. Now we have the mosaic, the service menu, I'll call it, that people have to choose from, because it's not just one way is the only way. And I do have a problem, with the, I guess, condescending nature in which people, when they get into recovery and now they're 6 months, 8 months sober, they did the 30-day program for the fourth time, and now it always seems to come back to Jesus. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. And I respect that. But it didn't work for me then. That shit ain't going to work on me now. I'm a very faith-based person, but not in systemic organized religion. Being raised a Catholic, my mother said to me up until her deathbed, Robert, you got to get back to the church. And I always told her the same damn thing. Mom, I can't look past the reality of that institution allowing generations of young boys and girls to be molested. There's no other side of that for me. If you could say we look the other way, they fix that, they don't do that anymore, we know that's all bullshit. They're still doing it today.
100%.
Right. So I couldn't get over that. I had 3-hour conversations with Catholic priests about this shit, and not a one of them could convince me that that heinous crime against children can be overlooked on any level. I don't care if you just fed 10,000 fucking starving children. You can't come home and rape a kid. That good does not outweigh your bad. And unfortunately, that's kind of the reality we're facing today in America. Look at all the bad these fucking people in power do. Epstein, the island, all this shit.
Diddy.
But they're rich and they got money and they can have power. So we can overlook that. I don't
that's
buy
not
that.
right.
I don't subscribe to that, man. Not for 1 second.
No.
I don't know how far off your point I went on that one, but
No,
I
no, you're
apologize.
totally fine. You're all good. I mean, with the whole Epstein stuff, and I mean, that's just all so fucked up. Like, that's just all sorts of fucked up. And I mean, I see what you're saying with the Catholic Church, but I do kind of want to know. I mean, if you, what were your 12 steps to getting sober? I guess
You know,
what worked for you. If it wasn't AA with the whole Catholic, idea, then what was it? Because I feel like a lot of people struggle with that.
and on the back end of that little rant I just went on, I have nothing but love and respect for every religion. And, to any Christians who might hear what I just said and feel offended, I'm not intending to offend you. I respect you. I respect your choice and freedom of religion. I do call myself a Christian. I just don't subscribe to the modern version of it. I'm kind of going with the original shit, like that dude Jesus who like hung out with the lepers and the poor and the sick and the weak. I'm more with that story. I don't need a big building, all that shit, gold everywhere. That's all bullshit. But I no offense intended for anybody. But at the end of the day, I ask for the same thing in return. Let me be me, you be you. Hopefully, there's no problem there. But
There's one thing I kind of want to add to that, if you don't mind, because I feel like Christians specifically, like I have a grandma who's very Christian, but she's very also judgmental, and you see that a lot in big religious families. Whether that be
yep,
Buddhism or whatever the case may be, Christianity. They're very judgmental if you don't agree with them.
right.
And I feel like going back to the the pedophilia aspect of it. I mean, if I was Christian, I could kill somebody. My grandma would be like, that's fine. Like you say your 10 commandments, pray the rosary twice, you'll
Yeah.
be fine.
Even though you just broke one of the commandments.
Exactly. You know what I mean? But if I killed someone and I was agnostic, or if I was a Buddhist, or I was, an
Yeah.
atheist, or whatever the case may be, that would not be viewed in the same light. Does that
Right.
make sense? And I want to kind of touch on that just a little bit. I try to steer clear of religion, but fuck it, we're already on it. So whatever. I mean, I want to know how was your mom, during all of your blow days and your alcoholism days, like what would she say?
Super, super chill. My
Really?
parents, my mom was a disciplinarian in our house. My dad was the most kind, loving person I still to this day almost could say I ever met. My mom was the disciplinarian, but not in a bad way. Again, I'm third from the bottom of 8 kids. So my parents had a lot of experience raising kids in the 60s and early 70s. Excuse me. But, you know, I never lied to my parents. If I came home in 8th grade and my mom said, "Did you smoke marijuana today?" I didn't lie. I knew my mom. If I lied, the punishment was going to be way worse. But if I told the truth, the punishment was going to the hammer was going to drop, but it wasn't going to drop in the same way. And I understood that because of the things she taught me. My mom told me as a little kid, the worst thing you can be in life is a liar. Because if somebody can't trust your word, everything else is out the window. Then if something comes up missing, Grammy's ring is missing. Did you take it? I didn't take it, Mom. Well, I have a history of lying. Why would she fucking believe me now?
Absolutely.
Why
Absolutely.
would the cop, who knows me? You lie to me every time I fucking pull you over or I engage you. Why would I trust you? Why would I believe you now when you're saying you didn't rob that house? Because I didn't. How do I know that?
Mhm.
You're a liar. I never wanted to be a liar. In the Marine Corps, they taught us honesty, integrity, and pride. And that was just a step forward in the same things my parents taught me. But my mom never said, "You're bad, you're stupid, you're dumb." She said her messaging was as consistent as the day is long. You're choosing to do and make adult decisions as a child. That's not smart. And she was
Damn.
right. I didn't listen too much, but, you know, even when, but that generation was the World War II generation. And that was a different thing, too. Young people who didn't live it don't understand it. But when we were at big family, always together with family, I had a million cousins and aunts and uncles and all that shit. And everybody was partying to some degree. The adults, booze and cigarettes. The kids, booze, drugs, weed, whatever. But it was different back then. They knew the kids all went over behind the garage at a 4th of July party or something and, were smoking marijuana. They didn't trip out about it. They would just be like, kids are being kids. They were raised children through the 60s.
Mhm.
If you turned on the news, you knew that drugs were everywhere and young people were experimenting and they were finding new ways to get high or to find a buzz. And, so it wasn't immediately like, bam, holy shit, Robbie's 14 and smoking pot. We got to get him to rehab. Rehab was getting grounded for an entire summer in 8th grade and not being able to leave my property. That I didn't need any more therapy or rehab than that because my mom made us fucking work. She would come up with the craziest shit to, teach us our lessons. And I believe those forms of therapy were more productive for me. When we moved from Park Ridge to Barrington when I was in 8th grade, which was like the shittiest year of, I was smoking pot ever. I didn't even go to school. I was getting on the train in Barrington and going back to Park Ridge when my mom thought I was at school to hang out with my two best friends who then cut school as well. And we just sat in his garage and drank beer and smoked weed all day. And then I'd take the train home and no one was the wiser that I didn't go to school until the school called. And then that hammer dropped. But even then, it wasn't, this huge ass kicking or beating me down morally. It was, what is it? Why are you not going to school? What is it? We know this move was hard for you in 8th grade. I went to a Catholic school in Park Ridge from 1st grade to 8th grade with the same 40 kids. Get yanked out of that halfway through your 8th grade when you're finally kind of a big dog is tough. And then to go into a new school and be a freak with long hair. I had longer hair than anybody in the school in 8th grade, any boy, didn't have the money a lot of the kids in Barrington had. And, I was immediately a target. I got into a fight the first day I went to Barrington Middle School.
Really?
I got in a lot of fights because the streets I grew up on weren't the mean streets of Chicago, but they were right on the edge of it. And, violence was a pretty big part of my youth all the way through high school and even in the Marine Corps and until I finally got done with drinking in my early 20s. There's a greater chance than not from 7th grade to getting out of the Marine Corps that if I was drinking, there's probably going to be some kind of violence, surrounding it, involved in it, or
Because you
creating it.
grew up from that idea. You know what I mean? You grew up
We
from that.
street
Yeah.
fought as kids. You didn't pull out knives and stab each other. You just punched each other, beat the shit out of each other, knocked out a tooth, broke a nose, got a black eye. But, it kind of ended there. It wasn't beatings that took you to a fucking hospital, but it was just the streets, and it made you tough and all that shit. But it seemed to follow, and that was one of the biggest upsides because I don't like violence. I don't want to be in a violent scenario. I don't want to live in a violent environment. I don't want to see a violent community. So, that was another caveat for me, was that, I'm not saying I was some badass. I got my ass kicked way more than I kicked other people's ass. I'm not a big guy. I'm just a regular dude, but, I wasn't going to run from it. That Marine Corps taught me that. We run to danger. We don't run from it. And if we're in a bar and somebody's saying the wrong thing to my buddy, I'd be that first knucklehead to jump up and say, "Hey, motherfucker, what are you doing?" Sorry about that. I thought I silenced it.
No, you're good. Hold on. Just
But
give me 2 seconds.
mm-hmm.
I just gotta.
Yeah, so just I really was glad when that reality of nonviolence became a norm in my life, because I wasn't drinking and I wasn't, taking speed or doing blow or all these, we used to just call them uppers that just get you amped. And, it just, took me on a path to a better life, through clarity.
Were you more of an uppers person or a downers person? Because alcohol's a downer.
Right. Yeah, no, I think I tended to go more towards, speed and shit like that. I did meth a few times in the Marine Corps, on a weekend, but, a little bit, half-inch line of that little powder, and you're going for 12 hours, first time I did that, that was a wonderful feeling. I always felt like fucking Superman. But I didn't feel like Superman when that shit wore off.
Mm-hmm.
So, back when I tried that in the military, it was kind of like, a drug that Marines did gravitate to very quietly. And because they weren't testing for it yet in our drug tests. And before that drug takes over, it does make you feel like fucking Superman. You're talking, you're going on a 20-mile hump with a 60-pound pack on your back, and you got to go play Marine and all that shit. I could see how Hitler did what he did, because they were all high on methamphetamines.
Mm-hmm.
Hitler himself and the whole German army, those fuckers were high as fuck on that shit. And that's a really, really dangerous drug to me. And I'm glad I dabbled with it, but never got too far into it.
Do you think that would be like, out of all the drugs you've done, that was your most addictive?
I think for me personally, doing meth, yes, because cocaine, you get a bump for 15, 20 minutes, and then you need more. That's a really amazing high with a very short shelf life. Mm-hmm. That high goes away fast, and then you're just needing more. With meth, you get $100 of meth, that lasts you a fucking weekend, and you could go for 5 days on that. $100 a blow, it's gone in 20 minutes, and you're craving more. So to me, yeah, that was a really, really dangerous drug.
Would you consider it to be the hardest that you've ever done?
What's that?
Would you consider it to be the hardest you've ever done?
The hardest drug?
Yeah.
Yeah, between that and cocaine, for sure.
Okay, absolutely. Now, what is your opinion on psychedelics? Because that's something that we talk a lot about. Because, a lot of people are split on this podcast. Either some of them want all the psychedelics to be legal, they want mushrooms, acid, DMT, or they're like, no psychedelics. Why the fuck do you need to see purple elephants? Now, to be fair, the people who say no, most of the time have never taken psychedelics, or they've taken it one time and had a very bad experience.
Right. No, I said earlier in this conversation, I believe all drugs should be legal and regulated, even more regulated than booze. 21, you can buy any fucking alcohol you want, just as dangerous as any of the drugs you could mention, any one of them. I also believe that alcohol, you say, oh, marijuana is the gateway drug. Bullshit. Alcohol is the gateway drug to the bad. Not that weed isn't. Maybe it is. Maybe it's not. I don't know. It wasn't for me. Yeah, I wasn't sitting around smoking weed and somebody would show up with cocaine and I'd be like, hey, I don't, as a kid, I'm like, I ain't got money for that. And B, no, I don't need that. We're high. Why? I'm high right now and happy. We're playing frisbee and hacky sack in the park. Why the fuck do I need to do more?
Were you surrounded by cocaine when you were younger in Park Ridge?
Not in Park Ridge, but in Barrington. Lot of money. The drugs were, you could get any drug you wanted in my high school. Anyone. 1980, 79, 80, open campus. It was a different time. That's for damn sure. But any drug you wanted, you could get.
Now, there's something that I do want to bring up because you talked about it previously, and I was going to bring it up then, but our conversation changed. When you said that your mom was very chill about you doing drugs, I'm kind of curious to know where that switch of the flip happened. Like, was it the Reagan administration when they were pumping out all the what? Like, when did it become so bad that you were doing drugs? When you were smoking weed, you know what I mean? Like when did that flip happen? Because I feel like you look back at the '60s and the '70s, everybody was doing way harder shit than weed.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I don't think there was any linchpin moment beyond, in my early 20s. Like I said, once I got out of the military and came home to, do my part for our family business, meeting my wife, it was just, again, a little series of those omens or red, green lights, you want to call them, that, just helped me make better decisions. There was no one. People ask me all the time when they know or find out that I'm basically sober from hard drugs and alcohol. Almost the first thing I'm asked is, what happened? Car wreck? You kill somebody? You hurt? What happened? No, nothing happened. Thank God. That's why I'm glad I quit when I did, because nothing really bad happened. I didn't ever hurt anybody. I didn't get in a horrific car accident and kill some single mom or young mom with a kid in the car, any of that shit, like people I know that did have those experiences.
Oh
It
wow.
was just a matter of, you know, getting my head clean and sober, getting my brain clean and sober, and running, physical fitness. That was something I learned in the military. And I try and pass that messaging on to kids that I work with today, because I say this all the time to people. I can get you high 100 different ways without drugs, and only skateboarding might get you thrown in jail, which is a little bit of a joke. If you
Yeah,
know
no.
skateboarding and the skate culture, we're the bad kids. But, you don't need drugs. The first time I rappelled out of a helicopter in the Marine Corps, that was a better buzz than any drug I ever did in my life. Conquering the Marine Corps obstacle course or confidence course in boot camp, was a better high than any drug I could ever find or take. Rappelling off of 100-foot towers or whatever, these adrenaline based things that we did in the Marine Corps, even going on 20-mile runs, you get high. I have ran in the military and in my adult life, going out to forest preserves, trail running, and can tell you I've been tripping. I've been on runs. I would love to run on Sunday mornings in McConnell Woods right here in Woodstock, early, get to wake up a lot of the deer and shit. And springtime, when nature's blooming, you're on mile 3 or 4 of a run, especially that early in the morning. Many times as I'm looking around trail running, I'm just like, this is the exact same high as taking mushrooms. I feel like I'm tripping right now.
With
And
visuals?
huh?
With visuals?
Absolutely, looking at nature and colors and the sun rising. Where I'm talking about getting out at 8 o'clock in the morning, and the thickness of the tree canopy kind of allowing sun to come in, and flowers and weeds blooming in different ways. Hell yeah! And again, there's it's just all endorphins, and our brain, and there's many many, many experiences I've had snowboarding in Utah. Once I got good on that snowboard, man, me and my buddies, we would go to Utah every winter. And I mean, you talk about a 2 hour foot hike in the back country of Utah at 9,000 feet in the Wasatch Mountain Range. And, you know, you find that spot, you're going to drop in, and two turns in knee deep, waist deep powder on a snowboard in what we, in Utah, they always called it the steep and the deep. That wasn't Alpine Valley. This was some heavy, gnarly shit. And even then, I learned quick. If I smoked weed in the morning and then tried to do that, it fucked me up. I learned real quick, if I'm taking this effort, this energy, and this money to go all the way to Utah for 10 days, I'm not going to ruin it by being fucking high first thing in the morning, because the high I got sober, ripping through that waist deep powder, flying through the trees, all that cool rad shit we did, was again a way better high than you could get from smoking pot or anything, any drug. Those buzz, and maybe that's just unique to me. I don't know. But once I started saying to my bros in those mornings, hey, let's not smoke till noon. I didn't smoke yesterday. I didn't even tell. I didn't make a deal. I just handed it off. Yeah, sure. We're on the gondola going to the top of Park City or whatever. Sure. I just didn't hit it. All my friends were, whatever. But man, I became a better snowboarder. I did the same thing in mountain biking, wakeboarding, a lot of the shit I did, you know, because that was at that point, I was just only smoking weed, no booze, no drugs. And even realizing that it wasn't enhancing my performance, it was hurting it.
Absolutely. Something I'm seeing with what you're talking about is the discipline aspect, you know, whether that's running, going to the gym, you know, hiking up 2 hours up a snowy, cold fucking Utah mountain.
Right.
You know what I mean? Just to snowboard down. Like all of these things, discipline itself isn't building the dopamine, but you're getting the dopamine from the end result.
Right.
Does that make sense? And
Yep.
and now for people who are recovering or are looking to recover, you know, because I have friends even who are like, you know, I want to quit smoking weed, but I really don't know like what to do with my time. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like I don't know what my release will be then. And you know, I know that he'll probably listen to this podcast, and he'll, you know, if you were to say something to him, I guess what would you say?
Same thing I told myself. I never said out loud, I'm never going to drink again. I'm never going to quit. I'm never going to smoke pot. I'm never going to do cocaine again. I'm never going to take acid again. I never told myself that. I told myself, today, I am not going to get high. I'm not going to drink today. And if anyone that listens to this is out there saying to themselves or their friends, man, I need to quit. I need to quit. Quit. Look yourself in the mirror every day, soon as you wake up, and we can't bullshit ourselves. We can lie to ourselves, but we know we're lying to ourselves. We know it. I could say, I'm not going to do this today. I'm not going to drink coffee today. 2 hours later, I know I'm drinking coffee. You know, don't do that to yourself. If we're inherently honest with ourselves and just make realistic daily affirmations, I'm not going to smoke pot until I get off of work. Try it. See how that day goes. You know, I'm not going to drink until the weekend instead of every night. Try it. See if your life gets better. Again, moderation is fine. Marijuana is a legal product in our state for people over 21. If you can smoke weed in moderation and it not become a problem for you, the same as drinking, then you're okay. You probably are solid. You might not have a problem. But if you're telling yourself, man, I really need to quit, you're being honest with yourself in that communication. So quit. Mind over matter. You hold the key to your own future. I love the Grateful Dead. One of my favorite lyrics is, from a song called Uncle John's Band, and in there they say, "I can tell your future. Just look what's in your hand." Simple as that. You got a bong in your hand or a book in your hand. You got a gun in your hand or a fucking feather of peace. What are you doing? Why are you doing it? What results are you expecting from it? Even when it comes to, I smoke casually. It's a legal product. I support that. But, I only know maybe 2 or 3 long-term functional stoners.
Like smoking every day is
Yep.
what you,
Wake up.
Wake up, hit it. Yeah.
All day. You can't tell when they're high and when they're not because they're always high. But I only know, quite honestly, a handful of people that could fucking do that without ending up in tragedy. Don't bullshit yourself. I remember when I was young and starting, early 20s, starting to get a grip. And like, again, I got a huge family. We'd go to these family events, family parties. And I started refraining because I didn't want to go see my aunts and uncles who I love and respect so much stoned. I was already good on the booze, but I didn't want to go over there and say hi to my aunts and uncles and hang out with them when I'm fucking high. It wasn't the vibe I was looking for. Every time I did it, I sat there like a little kid, like, oh my God, I'm fucking high as shit. Oh, why am I having this conversation with my dad's sister?
Yeah.
I got to get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, 100%.
Every one of those people have passed. Why waste any opportunities? If you could do it high, cool. Be you, do you. If you need help, reach out, get it. But if you think in any way you got a fucking problem, guess what? You got a problem.
Well,
And that's not necessarily bad. It just needs to be addressed. It's like if the plumbing in your bathroom breaks, water spewing all over the floor, you got a problem. Do you go and use the bathroom again? No, you stop and try and fix it. Our own lives and our own decisions and our own addictions and our own choices are the same shit. If something's not right, stop. Fix it. Recover. You can't, one of the first t-shirts I made at Warp Core when we started printing apparel, it said recover. And a lot of people in the recovery space who saw that said, Rob, you can't say that. You spelled it wrong. There's no Y. What do you mean it's recover? You can't say that. Why can I not say that? I've recovered. In the Marine Corps, in boot camp, you hear it all the time, the drill instructors screaming. Anytime they're trying to teach you to march or do this or do that, and everyone's fucked up because they're trying to create a fucked up situation. They're always yelling, recover, which means stop what you're doing, get your shit together, and go forward. Recover. I am not at 62, like I said, I think at the beginning of this thing, going to carry. I'll talk about my youth, my indiscretions, the shit I did like this, but I'm not going to carry that. That's not defining who I am. I've done so much since then. Why would I carry that and say, why can't I say I've recovered? I know several people that were in the worst realities of addiction, alcoholism, or abuse and fucking got right and recovered. And they ain't carrying that baggage with them their whole lives. You do not need to carry the baggage of our mistakes and indiscretion. There's a book called The Four Agreements, Don Miguel Ruiz, unbelievable author. Read this book. In there, he says, human beings are the only animal on the planet that pay more than once for their crimes. The analogy is the lion's feeding on a zebra. Okay? And the big male lion comes in to get his share of the food, and then another male lion comes over to eat the zebra as well, and he swipes at him, chases him away, and gets his share of the food, and then walks away, and the other lions come and get fed. But he doesn't go to that same lion tomorrow and smack him in the face.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
We don't need to do that to ourselves. If you paid the price, the system is fucked. That's why so many people coming out of jail, they just paid their price for whatever put them in that jail cell for 6 years or 10 years. Why isn't that enough? They paid their price. We don't have to punish them the rest of their lives. I work with people every day that can't get a fucking job. Before I came here, a dude my age who can't get a job because of one felony from when he was 26. He's 60 and he still can't get a fucking job because of one indiscretion. That's a systemic failure, and or, as some of my friends would say, a system that works perfectly as designed. I don't know. But, you can do it. That's the only thing I could tell you. I did it. I'm nobody special. I'm just a regular fucking guy. I didn't go to college. I don't have a fucking master. Whoops, I keep hitting this. I don't got a master's, a PhD in anything but fucking life. And a successful marriage and 3 wonderful adult children who all helped me run Warp Core. And, that's the only education I got. But I'm telling you, you don't got to be special. You don't got to be fucking something you're not to get right and have a good life. You just got to look yourself in the mirror every day and be honest with yourself. Set a plan. Have an attack plan for what your day looks like and what your fucking life looks like. That doesn't mean battlefield conditions don't change, because they do. But at least if you have a plan, my mom told me this 1,000 times, if you do not know where you're going to end up somewhere else. And that's the message I'm trying to make here. Thank you, Mom. You came back into my head when I needed you. This is as simple of a message as a key to success. Know where you're going, and you can get there. But you got to do the work. No one is going to give you shit in life. You got to go get it. Not take it forcefully. You have to earn it. I'm, again, living proof of that. With very little education and seeing the green lights or omens that came my way at different points in my life have allowed me to be somewhat successful financially and live my best life serving others. Find something that you're passionate about, and that can change. It's, the worst thing somebody can ask a kid in high school, what are you going to do with your life? I hate when people say that shit. I didn't know. They didn't know. Who knows that? No, you can't. Unless you're that weird freak kid that is, I'm a doctor, or I'm a scientist, or I'm this. That's a really bad thing to ask young people, because it's not fair. And life isn't fair, but you don't need to make life more unfair to young people at the most vulnerable and hardest point in their life. I say try a lot of shit and see what resonates with you. I'm not talking about drugs and alcohol. I'm talking about life. Try. Maybe you're an artist. Maybe you're a photographer. Maybe you're a fucking plumber. Whatever. Find out what it is that you're good at, you like to do naturally, and build your battle plan for life around that. It's just that simple. Again, it just all starts with honesty with yourself. Do not bullshit yourself. Every time, and we all do it. I do it. Everybody does it to some degree, but you got to be able to pull that rein back and say, I just can't believe I just convinced myself that was the right thing to do right now, when I knew it wasn't. But we still do that, and that's okay. We're fallible. We're human fucking beings with emotion and blood coursing through our veins, and we're going to make mistakes. That's how we learn. The more mistakes you make in life, if they don't kill you, they teach you, and they make you a better person. I can't believe I'm almost 63 years old sitting here doing this podcast with you, Menace, because, green light. You came into my store today. You said, I do this. What did I say to you?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's go.
Let's do it.
Today.
Literally an hour later.
Green
Yeah,
light.
literally.
I
I walked into his store today, and then he was like, yeah, fuck it, let's do it. And I was like,
Right
okay.
now. Yeah. So, I appreciate that. But again, that created an opportunity for me to get to know you a little bit, to sit here and do this podcast with you, and I appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you very much for showing up.
Yeah.
I'm just going to do a little quick outro and then we'll be all
Sure.
set. Thank you all very much for watching. I hope you guys really appreciated the interview. If you did, please like and subscribe and drop a comment down below. If you are struggling with addiction and you need resources, we have many, 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 many resources. He has many resources in order to help you, and you are not alone in your fight. No matter what your support system looks like, you will always be supported with Warp Corp and any other resource out there. Okay, do you have any other final comments?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. There is more resources and help in McHenry County and the surrounding area than you may know. As Mena said, if you are hurting, if you're struggling, maybe your best friend's struggling, maybe somebody in your family, in your orbit is hurting or struggling, both with mental health or addiction problems, Warp Core is here for you. Warp stands for We Are Real People, and a core is a group of people that share a belief system. 13 people on my staff are dedicating their lives to serving others. If you need help or anyone you know needs help, come to Warp Core, up onto Woodstock Square. We are here to help you.
Okay. Thank you all very much for watching. Have a wonderful day. Bye.
Peace.